held in person, and it can also be viewed on local cable channel 1303 or on the internet by accessing bucksportmaine.gov and selecting agendas and minutes and choosing this meeting and clicking on the video button next to the meeting. Questions or comments may be submitted during the meeting by emailing slassard@bucksportmaine.gov or during the meeting by calling 307-8030. As always, I will remind you this is a great time to make sure your electronic devices are on silent. And if you are going to speak in the meeting, I ask that you come to, and I will ask even more firmly during the meeting, I ask that you come to the podium and identify yourself. I think that's everything. Roll call, George.
Councilor Mark Eastman.
Here.
Councilor Paul Godwin.
Here.
Councilor Tracy Hare.
Here.
Mayor Paul Bissonnette.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Steve Bishop.
Here.
Councilor Ed Rankin.
Here.
Thank you. Next is presentation of any town council recognitions. Just one this evening. I wanted to say a few words. Several weeks ago, former councilor James Morrison passed away. Jim's term normally would have finished in about a month, but if you remember, he resigned a little over a year ago due to health issues. And when I sat over there, I sat next to Jim, and I'm glad that I got to know Jim. He was in a group of earnest and interested people. He was one of the more earnest and interested people that I served with on this council. And I wish his children, Jeff, Erica, and Kenny the best, as well as his extended family. And if we could, I'd like to take just a few moments of silence for Councilor Morrison. Thank you very much, everyone. Next, we will consider minutes of previous meetings. We have the October 24th Town Council meeting minutes. I will assume everyone's had a chance to review those.
Motion to approve. Second.
Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We have some correspondence that we've received and to review. The first is the Down East Transportation Ridership Report from both August and September of 2024. We have a thank you letter from Home Incorporated, which was included in our information, as well as an Orland police call from Halloween of 2024. Any questions on any of those? Thank you. We do not have any ordinances to consider this evening. We have several discussion items. However, the first is an update on the meeting regarding the dams that took place last week on November the 14th.
All of our council and our current council and our incoming councilors attended the meeting. It was, personally, I found it extremely frustrating to attend a meeting that actually felt designed to quell public input. If you looked at the agenda, it showed an introduction and it showed an end time of 6:30. There were well in excess of 200 people there, and a time limit of 3 minutes apiece. And, oh, by the way, we won't answer any questions. We will answer them in 10 days on a website, which the good part of conversation when you have questions is if you ask a question and get an answer, it sometimes spawns a second question or the need for follow-up, and none of that was available to anybody that participated in that process. They're supposed to answer questions, or the questions that were identified there, or have some response to. I won't say answer, because they also made it clear that evening that in some respects they considered some material confidential, and they wouldn't be answering that. So we'll wait and see what the response is on the 24th. We have received a response from them in regard to our first list of questions that we had issued some time ago from our attorney, and that indicated that those would also be answered as part of that process. And our next council meeting will be the date that we hold the meeting at which the council would decide to commit to looking for further information on this. We're required within 60 days of notification to have a public meeting at which in our case, the council decides whether or not to pursue additional information for potential ownership. There's no commitment on the part of the town for doing that, but if you don't do that, you've stepped away from the table entirely in the future of what happens with these dams. So that will be on the 12th. As I said, the 24th is supposed to be when they provide answers to questions that were raised. I will say some very good questions were raised. Maine Water had some really pointed legal questions for them, and also raised the issue of the fact that Silver Lake has served as not only Bucksport's water supply, but it has, in times of drought, been the source of water for Castine and other communities over time. And that in order for that to happen, that entire system needs to stay intact, which includes the pipeline. So, to be continued, I guess. We had a meeting of the dam committee this afternoon with the 5 towns that are involved in that. Keep hearing from some sources that we should be doing something. We're not doing something. And the answer is we are doing everything we can legally to follow this process that's set up in statute, and that towns are not set up to snap their fingers or run around, scream and shout and try and do something not responsible with no information behind them to do so. And there's no way that I could in good conscience sit here and say, what a great idea, let's take over the Silver Lake Dam, with zero information on what the responsibilities or the costs or the legal implications would be for the community, or without making sure that the current owners are required to live up to all of their responsibilities under the law. So sometimes I get a little testy when I hear that, because I know how much time we are spending on this topic. So for anyone that I've offended in the last month or so, when that topic comes up, it's only because we are trying very hard to make sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and that we engage as many partners and others in this process to ensure that the towns of Bucksport, Orland, Surrey, Penobscot, and Blue Hill are not victimized by getting saddled with millions of dollars worth of responsibilities for which they never signed up in the first place. So that was the other night and many days in between, but where anybody who's watching and anybody who's here should be very proud of your elected officials. As I said, everyone, even if they're not yet in office, attended and were part of it, as did our town attorney. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
I heard from a community member that they really appreciated our attorney stepping up to inform the public on how to provide feedback to DEP based on the process for asking questions. It was sort of, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but there was a redirection from Bucksport Mill LLC. They answered the person's question, directed them to the website, but the person's question was not about that. It was about how do we provide feedback to DEP about the process of our voices to be heard. And so just some feedback for our attorney that was super helpful at the end. And I appreciated that as well, because I caught that pretty quickly.
I did not like the fact that no one from DEP showed up. That this hard, man.
I provided some feedback to DEP the day following the meeting, that discussed, the fact that many people were unhappy that DEP was not represented, that the meeting structure itself, seemed designed to suppress questions. People won't stand up and ask a question if it goes off into the great void, and they might hear something about it in 10 days, and it's intimidating to have someone sitting here going like this with their watch, you know, for 3 minutes, 30 seconds, you know, that's intimidating. And anyway, I provided that feedback that DEP wasn't there, and that their failure to answer anything just created a really high level of frustration in the 200 plus people who were in attendance, and just left people more unsettled than they were when they got there. So, when an agenda says it's gonna end at 6:30 and everybody gets 3 minutes apiece, and there's 200 and some people in there, you think that could end at 6:30? When we went in, I asked the person passing out the agendas, I said, this says it's gonna end at 6:30, 3 minutes apiece? Yep. You're gonna let 30 people talk, and then what happens to everybody else? And the response was, we'll get as many as we can. And so then our attorney spoke to the moderator about whether or not they were going to let everyone speak or not, and he indicated that he would. So it was an interesting evening.
Would the DEP be willing to come to the one that we have, do you think, on the 14th?
There are now 5 scheduled, one in each of the communities. I'm not sure they're gonna attend all of them. The committee of the 5 towns, discussed today the idea of asking DEP to come to better explain the process. You know, they've sent out all these things saying this is the process, but since they've never been through the process, I don't know that
They don't even know the process. There is no process. We're a guinea pig.
that's
I mean, essentially, this is a guinea pig process, and if they don't watch the process and keep an eye on the process, it's just gonna get swept through the rug.
well, I am
If they don't, I'm not saying us. They have to keep an eye on it, and it's their responsibility.
which was the point of the feedback following that, and
Right.
encouraging
Oh,
people,
oh,
as
100%,
Tracy
yeah,
said, to
you did exactly what, yeah, 100%.
well, the other thing is David's comment that people that want DEP to know what's going on in this process should contact DEP directly about that, rather than funneling it through another website. And if you've gone to the website, which I did, because I didn't have 3 minutes worth of comments, I had 4 minutes and 45 seconds, because I didn't know what the format was, and I had to cut it down, and I presented it, and I went to the website to put it on it, and you can't, it's just put in your name, put in where you live, and then it says question, but I had a whole document, and I couldn't do that, so I sent it to their consultant, and I sent it to the DEP, and I also, there were some errors in the presentation I just want to note. One was that there are no industrial uses for any of these lakes. Bucksport Generation is a power plant. It utilizes the water from Silver Lake for the cooling tower. It can't run without it. That is an industrial application. If you saw me taking pictures of the slides, it was because that was not accurate. And the other thing was they said they were at step 1, which was that meeting, and step 2 was consultation. So that was not considered a consultation, but later in the meeting, Bucksport Mills representative referred to that night as a consultation. So that is the consultant said one thing and the company said another in terms of what that, the other night actually represented. And there's a third thing, but anyway, there were some, things that we registered with DEP that were inaccuracies in the presentation, as well as the format being less than conducive to a conversation with the public about it, so.
I've been getting a lot of questions. There's some confusion about the Bucksport Dam meeting, where each town's having their own of what the purpose of the meeting and when.
Meeting is December 12th. It's our next council meeting. And the purpose of that meeting is for this council to take input, to decide whether to move forward with considering taking information about potential ownership of the dam. That's the purpose of it. And voting to do that, which I hope the council will, keeps the town involved in this process. If you simply say, we don't care what anything is, we're never gonna even look at this, then we're out of the picture.
So it's moving forward to consider.
Oh, it's only to consider. It's a due diligence period. It's not, if we find out this, then we will do that. There's no commitment required, but every community has to decide within 60 days whether it wants to move forward in the process of looking at this or not.
And during that process, we can absolutely state that we do not have any sort of assessment of current condition, and that is a major factor.
We can ask for anything.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of discussion about information not being released to the public. And I've made it clear to our attorney and to the department that unless there's some legal contractual, that we're not gonna do this in the dark. That if we have information that is relative to this, that isn't legally defensive, that just because you don't want people to know it isn't the reason
Yeah,
that.
I mean, what do they think we are? Like,
I-
I mean,
well-
who would take on something that massive and that important to so many people without knowing? You don't buy even a $2,000 car without looking under the hood. Like, who do they, it's,
Well, the problem is that I'm not comfortable with the council having 10 executive sessions to talk about information that we can't tell the public. That's not,
well, we are the public and we represent the public, so they should understand that.
well, I know that. So that was mentioned several times the other night in terms
Yeah.
of what could be released to the public. And if you did this, you would need an NDA. And I said, I don't, unless someone can.
Anything, what's the issue?
Well, yeah, I'm confused about what's protected about this I mean, I understand, like, if this were some sort of social services, social work, I guess I'm a little naive.
If HIPAA was involved, I get it.
Right?
But
Yeah, exactly.
where that's not the issue. And so we push back on that. I can commit to the people, we're not doing this in the dark. We're not
Yeah.
doing this without everything that can be public. I think we need to be public. How can we possibly be accountable to people if we don't push for
Yeah.
that to be too big a topic for too many people to.
And where does our ordinance fit into this process?
Oh, that's one of the questions that was raised the other night, is are you going to comply with the local ordinance? So this is a stay tuned kind of
Yeah, they're not-
conversation, but it is.
I have a question in reference to now they've granted them their, I say permit or.
The only thing they've done is accepted the petition as complete.
Okay, So in doing that, that starts the process. Now, if the DEP or whoever grants the,
Final decision.
or, right, if they find that, one, they've fabricated, or we'll say lied, I like that word better, they've lied in their petition, like on the uses and all of that they have, 'cause we can, that's easily provable, but can they revoke that?
They didn't,
Or
what they,
mislead?
that if, right now, they've submitted something to fill every slot, okay?
Right.
There's been no evaluation of whether what got filled in.
Okay, it's
It's
just
just been
filled.
accepted.
Ah, okay, I'm tracking.
There's a checklist. There are things that need to be provided and that were requested to be provided, but I don't know that there's been any analysis of
Mhm.
What was provided?
whether that's, you know, the title right and interest, meaning the legal obligations,
Right.
is missing all of the documents related to the contractual liabilities and the deed restrictions. All those easements, none of those were provided. Those are all part of the title to that property.
Okay. Perfect. You answered my question. Thank you. Makes me feel better.
Just a quick
That's a big
note. I appreciate the conversation this evening, but I've gone back and forth whether I was gonna say anything about this, and guess what, I'm going to. We showed up the other night. We didn't have to. Sue could have stood there by herself and said what she said and been probably just as effective if no counselor had been there. And I've talked a lot about managing perception, but that's not what that was the other night. We showed up because it was the right thing to do. The Department of Environmental Protection did not have to be there the other night. But it's the question I've been asked the most since that meeting the other night. The Department of Environmental Protection should have been there the other night, not because they were there to answer every question that was asked, but because it was the right thing to do. Period. The Department of Environmental Protection could have said, we're not here to answer questions, we're here to take a look at how this goes this evening, make sure that we're hearing all the same things that you are, we're gonna take it back and, but we're here tonight. That didn't happen. And as just one person on this council and also a taxpayer in the state of Maine, the Department of Environmental Protection is not doing a good job managing its perception. And they failed. And they did not have to be in Bucksport last week, but they should have been. I guess that's all I'll say about that for now. Any other questions or comments?
Want to take any from the public?
I would love to, and I saw this gentleman's hand first. And
I am coming to you from, my name is Tom Mott, I live in Bucksport. And I believe the last time I talked, I didn't realize I was live streaming, and I made some words that I would have taken back had I figured that out. It was incendiary, but I'm not here to do that tonight. I'm here to ask some questions. Since we don't know anything because it's all confidential, does the council know anything about prior inspections of these dams? How long it's been, any of that? Okay. Has it been a long time?
There was a dive done on the, dams in June of this year.
Oh.
There was an inspection done in 2021, and interestingly enough, if you're reading the application, you click on the one that says 21, but when you get all the way to the end, after some pages, there's results of the 24 thing. But you wouldn't know it if you didn't, if you went to the 21, look, that's where you find the 24.
I think somebody else asked you that question. I asked the same question.
Well, would it be in the interest of us not knowing what's confidential to get an outside inspection done? And is that anything that sounds attractive? I'm asking this because it happens that I grew up with someone who had been and then is reasserted to clear their backlog, dam safety engineer for Vermont, and spent a hiatus being dam safety engineer for all of California. So he's got some kudos to bring, and he would be not influenced one way or the other, and I could see the state of Maine going, this doesn't happen, that's okay. But I thought I'd ask the question. I could ask him if you deemed this as, maybe we want to do this, or maybe we don't. That's all.
My only concern with that is us taking on and paying for something that should be paid for
I
by
understand.
AIM.
agree.
It's private property.
I had asked that question in committee.
It's private
Sue didn't
property.
like
Okay, so
So
we can't
you,
just step
you
sideways.
need to be, I mean, people have said, oh, if I'm in the lake and I'm close, that,
Yeah.
that's not,
It's not gonna work.
that's not a core to see how the concrete is. That's not, you know, the kind of things that are recommended in the 24 dam. There are some things that were recommended for AIM. I don't know if they've done any of them.
Okay. Where I was headed with this is to get, since we know nothing, or has been released, some sense of exactly, at least for the Silver Lake Dam, how, and others if you wish, in terms of today's dollars guess estimate, how much money it would take to bring it up to speed.
It's not that it's in, that Silver Lake is, at least, is in terrible condition. It's the long-term care and maintenance of a dam that is, at a minimum, 7 figures apiece.
Okay.
That's just, in the long term, dams are expensive to have and care for appropriately, and
Yeah.
well, I don't know this for sure, I'm thinking they've had very little care for some time.
Well,
So
okay, thank you for your answers, and consider that if there's any way to get through if you want. I'm not sure what you would charge, but I might be able to do it.
Chapman.
Ralph Chapman from Bucksport here, and just a quick question. Has the dam owner applied for any town permit relative to the town?
No,
Okay. And then, a question, I understand from a friend of mine in Penobscot that there is a fund that's been established there for, I'll call it a legal defense fund. And what I'm wondering is, I don't know whether that was something that the 5 towns had talked about or had done, or whether that's just the town of Penobscot, and I don't know whether it's a town function or a citizen function, and I'm wondering if you have any information about that.
I do. The towns of Orland, Surrey, Penobscot, and Blue Hill have gone to fundraising to pay for the joint attorney that the 4 of them have, because none of those towns have legal expense budgets that allow them to call an attorney much more than have one that's more engaged. And they've done that jointly because they're all, Toddy is all of their issue. Alamusic just Orland, but that's why they've done that. And we're not part of that because nobody will contribute to silver because that's only ours.
Good, thank you for that. And then just a couple quick quick comments. The presentation that they gave last Thursday is on the website which was the website that they're supposedly going to supply the answers, which of course has no answers on it as of today, but the presentation is there. And in terms of the mistakes on that presentation, I'll note two more. One is that they indicated that they were completely up to date with all of the maintenance and matters dealing with water level control, and we know from experience on Alamoose that that's not correct. But the other thing is they listed the wrong chapter of statute on their presentation materials. It was chapter 6, not chapter 5. So I just add that for information. Thanks.
Anyone else from the public? Anyone else from the council? Sure. All right. Thank you, everyone. Next is landfill closure plan update.
We have, on November 1st, the landfill closure plan was filed on time. It's 1,812 pages. There's a copy of it in my office, a written copy. They had originally just sent me a link. I said, I can't read 1,812 pages on a computer. My eyes will fall out. So we have a copy in my office. If anyone wishes to view it, the only thing that I would ask is they call ahead to do that and not do it between 11:30 and 1, because we put people in the conference room with it, and that's when staff has lunch, is between 11:30 and 1. DEP also has its copy of that application. We'll be moving forward from here when they have finished their completeness review of that whole thing. I have not read I've had some other things on my desk that have been more pressing than that one. But it is in-house. It was filed on time, and I want to credit the community with that happening, because I don't think without a lot of advocacy for pushing to close that facility that we would have seen an application just happening out of nowhere. So for the citizen group and the council who've supported this, I think it's a good first step in getting to the end of that process.
That's a good example of your persistence with some of these things. The fact that what we have wanted, requested, needed, and harped on to happen is actually coming to fruition is good to see in that brick that's sitting in your office. So.
People comment it's the biggest notebook they've ever seen, but
That's
it's
a good one. Yeah. Yeah. Great first step. Yep.
With that submission, is sort of similar to the dam. Is that sort of in a place of just everything's in place to accept it for review, but it's not being reviewed yet by
it
DEP?
has, there's a number of entities that have to review that. I will tell you that a step that I took in advance of this is that the company is required to have a waste discharge permit to the river for the leachate, and that's a 5-year permit, and it's currently up for renewal. And that permit considers that it's primary treatment because it comes from a pipe all the way down, a long way, and there's settling. And I contacted the DEP, the person who's in charge of that, and argued that since the cover of the interim cover is a sieve, or has been a sieve, that there's been a significant amount of infiltration, which would dilute contaminant concentration in the leachate, and that if it was, a 5-year permit was issued, it would be out of sync with the required closure of the facility. The required closure is by 12/31/26. And that if instead they issued it for a 2-year permit, it would coincide with the end of it, and whatever came next would be based on the fact that that the facility was closed and they could get contaminant levels that were free from the stormwater infiltration that would have been occurring, and give them a better way to assess what the actual contaminant level was. And they agreed to put that forward. They were gonna discuss it with Karen Conley, who's the person, so that seemed a prudent thing to request, rather than just, these are 5-year licenses, it's hard to reopen them, to issue it for a shorter time period and have an evaluative process for determining what the contaminant levels were with cap, as opposed to with everything going through. So I did take that step outside of, it is in conjunction with this, but I didn't ask permission. I'll ask forgiveness if necessary, but it seemed to be a prudent thing when I was notified that the license was up for renewal. It made more sense to tie it to the closure of the facility than just leave it at.
Else from the council? Public? Don?
Don White, Bucksport. For the last 2 years, since November our citizens group has worked on this, and we've been before you several times. We met again last week to talk about the closure plan, and we'll participate as a group in our thoughts about what's in that plan. I myself spent too long, blurry-eyed, with that in front of me. Hours. I also came into the town office and set it on my lap when it was way too heavy for me to hold. I pretend not to understand what's in the bulk of that. It's very concentrated. Is a left table. But I did catch all the narratives, I did catch all the what-ifs and those kind of things and the dances that are in there. And I have a couple of comments, just preliminary comments. First of all, this is a serious matter. The mill provided excellent wages, tax base, employment, and livelihoods for so many people of this town for a long time. But one of its legacies is we've got a toxic pile up there, and that will be here forever. And I think it is up to us to be part of doing it the best we possibly can, because that thing is going to be there, and it's going to be transmitting stuff out for a long time. That's part of the reality. One of the things I did notice immediately about their schedule, they schedule not according to DEP's rules, but according to 5/27/27 is when they say that they will complete this, not January 1, 2027. Again, it's right there, it's right in. They also said they have an ongoing commitment to compliance. They've been out of compliance since 2016. So just the little kind of narratives and dances that go into these things that I think we should take a look at and maybe even make comments about if we want to protect ourselves, our groundwater, the Penobscot River, forever, for a long time. The Penobscot River has been here longer than any of us and ever will be. It provided transportation, it's provided fisheries, It's provided a way of life for people, beginning with the Wabanaki people, carrying it through and giving us great benefits, continues to do so today. We also, I think, have a great responsibility as a town and as a people to do the best we can, to leave it, to attempt to create as best we can what little pollutants will continue to go in there forever. I spoke to Karen Canuti several times about this, the project manager for our landfill here. I spoke to Mr. Greg Wood of the Water Department twice about this, and I have another call into him. Both have been very helpful and very kind and very easy to deal with. But there are some interesting things that I think that if you have some time, you ought to take a look at that to see, just because I think we need, as a council, as a town, as a group, to do the best we can at this point. Sue pointed out that our water permit is now up. It was up November 5th, I believe. So they are now at the point of reapplying or whatever they're going to have to do. The rules are different. We now know a lot more about what is in landfills, what's in leachate materials, than were years ago. The elephant in the room is the forever chemical situation. Everybody knows about it. I was sent the 2022-2023 study of the PFAS stuff that comes out of the Bucksport landfill. It's 157 parts per trillion. The state of Maine accepted, if there is an accepted, I'm not sure, is 20 parts. The federal EPA is now at the point of recommending 4. And the state is at the process of possibly adopting that. I don't know what's going to happen with the new, who knows what's going to happen with the new governmental stuff and the new EPA stuff and all of that. I don't know. But that's where the track was going, according to the people I talked to. And I did talk to the PFAS, Mrs. Kelly, the person in the state. And she saw that's where they were going. And it's a new ballgame. So I think in any kind of discussion relative to water discharge, we now must include forever chemicals, at least from you mentioned the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do, whether it meets standards or whatever it does. It's the right thing to do, because people are going to get hurt. And we need to do that. And the things they test for, too, are, solids and this and that, and it comes out of the pipe down here, and things. It could be tightened up. It could be tightened up. At least it couldn't be in the way it looks to me. It's loose. They're going to cover this thing. By the way, it's still for sale. It is not only for sale for possible, solar development. But when I asked the question directly to DEP, can they sell this thing to somebody and reopen it? Sure, that's their option. So I don't know. Could be an end run. I don't know. I've dealt with other large corporations who, at last minute, will pull one. I mean, obviously, it's in their best interest. It's in their best interest. I understand that. But they still have that option. It's completely open to them. They're here because of the pressures that this council, that our people have put on them to get that the closure plan in by November 1st. Okay. And that's why they're there. And they threw this thing together. But they've got some loose, like what they want to do is, we'll cover it with grass instead of all that crap, that mess they have up there now. But we're going to feed the grass. We're going to feed the grass with high phosphorus fertilizer, and we're going to feed the grass herbicides. I'm a farmer. I know better than that. I know there's better technologies. I know there's smarter ways to do it. Cost them a couple more dollars, but it's the right thing to do. Phosphorus in water bodies creates problems. Growths of algae, etc. Herbicides get into groundwater. Herbicides cause cancer. They're disgusting things. Relative to pesticides and fungicides are the worst of the things that you can apply. Sorry, it's true. I give you Roundup as an example. Okay, but that's what they say they want to do. It's cheap. We can do it this way. It'll. No, that's something that a comment could be made upon. Simple stuff like that. Their groundwater monitoring, and they say they have an ongoing commitment to this. Okay, great. They need to. We've got, that thing's going to be there a long time. Our groundwater needs to be protected. We're a quarter mile from Silver Lake. We're a stone's throw from Alligator Pond. Who knows, 25 years from now. But this is it. This is a closure plan statement, close it this way. Their bond that they've suggested, which was increased from like 10 million to 14 or somewhere around there. I find that interesting. It's going to cost them about 11. They said that was their guess that to close it, $11 million. That leaves $3 million into perpetuity for maintenance, liabilities, etc. Somewhere there needs to be protection in there for that. I mean, it's not enough money to protect for the possibilities of whatever. So whatever that happens. And they certainly wanted the town of Bucksport, because they explicitly said in there they considered us the partners for them for 6 years. It's in there. I found that interesting. They no longer do that. They no longer see Bucksport as wanting to be a partner with them or to own it. But anyway, there's stuff in there that smart people, that can understand things, need to look at it. My friend and colleague, Mr. Chapman, understands some of it. I understand very little. I do understand the written words, and I did look through it, and we'll continue to do so, and I hope we can all do this right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Chapman.
Yes, thank you, Ralph Chapman. I'll have to contradict Don right away. I'm not particularly knowledgeable about water quality measurements or landfill leachate, although I do understand aspects of how to evaluate scientific work, and I advocate for the use of science in the formation of public policy, as well as to understand our situation here. And so I'm coming to you with a suggestion, and I hope that at the very least you consider it carefully, which is to have the town contract with an environmental engineering outfit that has that necessary expertise to review the closure plan. And let me explain why I think that's important. First, the closure plan itself has been prepared by an outfit that the town has already determined is not necessarily acting in the town's interest. And so it already suffers from an appearance of non-objectivity on the part of the public. Another reason, though, is even if I were particularly knowledgeable, and we have a very knowledgeable town manager on this topic, there's a usefulness in what I'll call what I would expect will be the legal proceedings in the future, and I'm not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice, but it would be very helpful to have an independent review by people who are appropriately qualified to review it. I think 10 or 20 years down the line, what's the situation really going to be? As I see it, it's very likely that whoever owns it now, and however that ownership may or may not transfer, I fully expect that it will fall to the town at some point. It's typical in situations like this, as I've mentioned before, to try to separate the assets from the liabilities, put all the liabilities into the company that is designed to go bankrupt, and we just don't know exactly when it's going to go bankrupt, but I would fully expect that to happen before 10 or 20 years. Oh, and by the way, that comment of the $11 million that Don mentioned, when I heard that, it reminded me of where we were just a year or so ago, in which there was a thought that the town could save, I think it was $3 million over 10 years, sounded kind of nice, until one recognizes that maybe that wasn't so nice if we inherited tens of millions of dollars of liability. And it's interesting to me that the value already is well beyond what the benefit was going to be when the conversation started some time ago. In any event, so that's my suggestion, to get an independent, and of course, it isn't directly tied into it, but the town has a landfill that's closed and requires periodic monitoring. And I know that we have discontinued use of a environmental engineering firm that used to do that, is no longer doing that. Presumably the town is going to be looking for another one, and I don't know what the status of that is, and it isn't necessarily the case that the two have any relationship to each other, but they may. So I offer that as a suggestion to the town to look for an independent environmental consulting firm to review the closure plan and give the town its comments. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. Thank you. Next, Safety Committee minutes from March the 18th and August the 26th of 2024. I will assume everyone's had a chance to review those.
Why are we getting these now? Is this like are we having this meeting too? Okay.
Rich Patel, Economic Development. I'm the secretary for the committee, and we are required to give them to the council after we have the meetings, and I got a little bogged down and did not get the March one. So at our last meeting, we approved both. We did not have a meeting in the second quarter because when it was scheduled, we didn't have enough for a quorum, and the second quarter ended. So you will see them after our meeting quarterly. It's just a big gap since the last time. So that's my apologies.
So this is that whole, like, you taking on more than, this goes back to that kind of thing?
Called stepping up to the plate, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Rich.
Yes, sir.
Right. Any other questions for Rich? Comments or questions about the minutes themselves? Okay. Thank you. We have 3 agenda items. The first is Resolve 2025-26 to award the 2024-25, do that 10 times fast, I don't care who you are, propane and heating fuel bid to Dead River. I will note in the information that you have in your packet, when you see the actual bid, the number that is included in there, and you'd have thought I just scrolled down, the information that is included in there for R.H. Foster, the heating fuel bid, it's listed at $161. That is what actually came in at $2.84. see what, if there's anything to add there, or that, if I'm not
If
saying that correctly.
your town manager could type, it would be helpful, right?
Yeah, just trying
I
to
like
avoid
one
that.
61.
Yeah, well, so did I, but that's not the right.
That's where I was confused.
It's actually 2.849 is the heating oil.
Okay,
Motion approved.
questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next is Resolve 2025-27 to approve the MRC Board of Directors ballot for Paula Scott.
Motion approved.
Second.
Questions? Comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Ooh. And last, this is from last time, which is why the numbers are out of sequence. Resolve 2025-20 to approve replacement of the gas diesel system at the town garage.
Motion approved.
Do you want the answers to the questions?
Yes. We have a motion and a second. Comments?
Okay, last time, Councillor Rankin asked a question in regard to the 20,000. What that is 20,000 to register. The number's actually 50,000. That's a misprint, but it's in the cloud. Once you get to that, your information is not gone. It starts over again at that, but the previously recorded information for what vehicle, all that stays in it. It just sequentially goes to 50,000 and starts over. But it isn't. You don't have to do anything different because we would download that information every month into our system.
So no $5,000 fee once we get.
No
$50,000.
$5,000 fee once we do that or anything along those lines.
I
That
love that cloud.
it's entirely in order to that's how many if you didn't download anything, that's how many things you could have before it said, I'm gonna start over at one, but since we do it
rewrites
monthly,
itself.
what's that?
It just rewrites itself.
If you don't download it so that it doesn't do that, yes. Anyway, that was the answer to the
Thank you.
question in regard to that. I did follow up with them, and that was the answer to the question. That it was 50,000, not 20,000, and that if you're downloading your information, as we do on a monthly basis, into our system, then
You'd be fine.
you're good.
So 50,000 vehicles, drivers, and 50,000 transactions?
50,000, you can
You're only allowed one
you
question.
can hold up to 50,000 vehicles and drivers.
Right.
The key fob thing is just, everybody's got a code. Key
Okay.
fob is that what you waive, but he said nobody uses those because people lose them and they can't, it's just, they have a code like they do now. That's what does, but we could have that many vehicles, driver combinations in the system, but we don't have anywhere near that number. But it's 50,000 transactions before, if you didn't download, it would start over again at one.
Do we have a camera on that, out of curiosity?
Absolutely.
We do have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Let's see, we do not have any resignations, appointments, assignments, or elections this evening. Nor do we have the need to approve any quick claims, discharges, and deeds. We do, I believe, have a town manager report.
Yeah, somewhere. Just a minute. I have a couple of things beyond the stuff that's already in here that I wrote last week before we. So I received an email from Stephen St. Peter asking for an agenda item for the town to consider solar plans on the CSO building. I had put town office, that's wrong, on the CSO building. I've instead included in my manager's report, and the council can decide if it wishes to refer this to the infrastructure committee. Mr. St. Peter indicated he would be here this evening speaking on this under public comments. Contributions for the Paid Family Medical Leave Act are scheduled to begin on January of 2025. However, they do not impact employees with a union contract that was in place in 2023 until the end of that contract, which in our case is June 30th of 2025. The total required contribution is 1% of payroll, and employers have the option of paying the 1% or having employees pay part of the percentage up to 0.5%. And I'd like a finance committee on 12/12 to discuss how the council wants to proceed with that in January. A second item for that finance committee meeting would be the town doing a tax anticipation note and for borrowing in anticipation of the second half tax payment, necessitated because our fund balance is in the over 2 million range, but our outstanding taxes are over 4 million. So even if you compensate, it doesn't leave enough cash left over to pay for everything. We've not been in this position before, but it's been 10 years, and our fund balance is not 6 million anymore. It is 2.2, and a little over that actually. And so we'll need to borrow in anticipation of taxes. It would be from December to August, and that gets us through 2 tax payment periods and catches us back up to where we should be. However, the town may have to do this until it rebuilds fund balance. When we first started talking about this 100 years ago, it was with the anticipation that our fund balance would be restored through the process of the investment at the mill site, which was looked to bring in more than $1 million a year in business equipment tax from the whole oceans. And that is, to date, we've not had one additional dollar in investment on that site. And our mill rate has remained fairly stable. We've not had a sewer increase in 10 years. We've done our best to keep our commitment to people, to utilize resources to keep things in check as much as we can. But what that means is it necessitates borrowing. And this is not an unusual activity for many communities, but it's different here, and it's what we need to do in order to be able to pay our bills as we move forward. But again, that would be a second item on the finance committee. And infrastructure also prior to that, to discuss the facilities person that we talked about before. I have more information on wages, duties, all the kind of things that you asked me to come up with the last time. We could do that prior to the 12th. And that also would be the night that we discuss the Silver Lake Dam and moving forward on that. And in the good news factory, the Bucksport Fraternal Chapter 10765 of the Modern Woodman has selected for this year's Hometown Hero Award Axel and our K9 unit from
Excellent.
the town. So that's a yay for us, I think. That is it's a really positive, note that Axel's well received in our community. And with that, that's it.
Thank you. Questions for the town manager? Next is set public hearings and or hold public hearings and approval of any licenses or permits. We do have one that came in very late this evening, so I will ask the council for a motion to consider something not on the agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Those in favor? Opposed? It looks like we have an outdoor vendor business license application from Dale Fairbrother to sell wreaths. He'll do awesome selling leaves, won't he? Or she, excuse me, on private property, wreaths on private property.
Does it matter that Dale's name's spelled wrong?
What's that?
We got 2 Dales on here. We got a D-A-L-E and a D-A-I.
Well, it's the same individual because they made out the
Right.
permit, I think. But
I just noticed it at the end.
yes, it's
Is it? Yep.
It doesn't matter though, right? We're good.
Very good. How the council like?
Motion approved.
Second. Comments? Those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next is discussion of items not on the agenda for council and or public. We'll start with the public this evening. Mr. St. Peter.
Hi,
Hello.
Stephen St. Peter Jr., climate activist and Bucksport resident. As Ms. Lassard said, I have an idea for solar panels on top of the CSO building. I've done solar analysis. I've done how would it affect it, how much you would save on money, on electricity and stuff like that. And also, I think that possibly that building could possibly benefit from solar and possibly battery storage in case of a power outage. I don't know if this would be anything that the town would be interested in, but I think it'd be kind of nice since we're in the news about clean energy. So put that out there.
So that will be, we'll consider that at the infrastructure meeting on the
We
is
haven't
not-
set a date.
That's not on the agenda
It
for the
isn't.
infrastructure. On the agenda for infrastructure was the
Facilities.
facilities thing. I
Yep.
could put it this way to decide if you wanted to put to a committee vote or you wanted to wait as part of your budget to look at whether that's something that you're interested in.
It's the pleasure of the council.
I'd say the budget.
I'd like to wait till the budget.
Budget?
Budget's fine with me.
That's the place to have the conversation anyway. It would have ended up there anyway, so. Perfect.
Pardon my ignorance, but I'm not putting together CSO building.
The swirl concentrator down by the veterans.
Okay.
Memorial.
Yeah, right across from Wings.
That
I wasn't either.
Good question.
Oh, really?
Good question. Concentrated swirl, something. Isn't that what it?
combined sewer overflow.
It's a pretty
It's-
fancy
I was
sewer
close.
overflow building.
Yeah, okay.
It's the backup to our $13.8 million one up the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Couple
And you
updates
said
for
no.
the council. More good news. The company for the Performing Arts Center was here and completed the work today for the rigging system, and they also did the work that the RSU paid for, which was remove the back wall and put in the back curtain, which is what you do for theater. So I've been told that they'd like to get together and in the new year and come up with more lasting plans as well on next steps and everything and have involvement. So they inquired about counselors. If there'd be anyone who might be interested, I can forward you more information as it comes through my office.
Please do.
And then a second item that will need to be on the agenda for December 12th, the master plan for the waterfront resiliency. And we'll be able to close out the SHIP grant after that is accepted, assuming it'll be accepted by the council at that meeting.
Great.
What date?
December
The
12th
12th.
council meeting.
It's gonna be a big night.
Do
It
you
is.
wanna, yeah, popcorn. Did you wanna, I talk a little bit, just briefly about the meeting we had this morning?
Yes, the town manager and I met with Bucksport Bay Area Child Care Center regarding what's going on up the hill. Pleased to report they still have the same director, so there's some consistency. We've had more meetings with this group of folks. And looking budgetary wise, monetary wise on, what they ask the town for and need. As you know, the after-school program, which is a major revenue source due to a lack of employees, was sent over, and the YMCA picked up that for us. The town manager, with, of course, her expertise and everything, had some wonderful experiences and ideas from other communities that she served, and we're looking into, in collaboration with BDACC and RSU 25, some alternative arrangements.
They asked for 8,000 last time, right? I think
Didn't it, was it 8?
8,000?
Yeah, and
Okay.
previous to that it was 6. So, and I will say, back,
Yeah.
we asked some questions, and prior to COVID, they were one of the organizations that got some of the pay it forward grant money,
Yeah.
but their pay it forward was they sent it back to the town. Because during the COVID timeframe, child care centers really benefited from a lot of the money that was out there. So, you know, we gave them money, they turned around and gave us every penny of that back, so. We'll be having some more discussion and dialogue prior to us coming to the council. I think that was about everything we discussed, right?
Our text gov thing
Text gov.
starts next week.
Oh, I already registered today.
Yeah, I did too.
Well,
Got my text messages and
it's
everything.
absolutely fine, but the official rollout is next week for our emergency notification system, so that, if we need to, we're not gonna be sending you a message every 3 minutes, I promise you, but if there's something that's significant in terms of this was, discussed as part of our emergency operations planning, and a missing piece in how to better provide notification, but also would provide information on things like the change in that whole meeting date set by Bucksport Mail on one date and sent out for another date, and we could do some notifications that would make sure people were well aware of things that were big issues up for discussion in terms of the time.
Thank you.
I had one for Rich. It has to do with the playground. I had the privilege of going to the one in Brewer with my grandkids last week, and actually walked that whole facility. And as I was walking it, I actually could vision it up the road. It's beautiful. It's not real. It's not humongous, but it's actually not rubber.
No.
It's not. It's wood chips on the bottom. That's not rubber. That would be beautiful up there. It's nice. I don't know if that committee has actually gone up there and walked that. And I'm sorry to bring that up where it's about to snow, but it's the first time I'd actually been. I worked there, but it's the first time I'd been able to, and it just made me think of Ian's playground. So I knew we were having this meeting. I meant to bring it up last week, but we weren't here. But it
You're
was
good. My intern and I, last year's intern, we walked it, because through my research of Ian's playground, how it came about, it was similar to what Brewers was. Brewers was constructed in 2001. Ian's was constructed in 2003. At a cost of $68,000. $58,000 was the responsibility of the town. We received a $10,000 donation. Just happened to have a meeting with said playground company, and one of the features there that you probably remember, right?
Yeah.
So we just had that meeting here. We talked about the play chips, not the rubber, because a lot of your cost comes into the rubber surface as well as ramps. So not much play. I will tell you, I know what the cost of that new Brewer playground was, and it's smaller than what it was now and what it is here. But waiting on the 3 quotes to come back. I've been told potentially, most likely we'll have them back by December 2nd. We'll call together the playground committee again and have some options that are ADA compliant and very very useful for a lot of different factors for people without having the ramps.
Do they accommodate the little guys? Remember that question from some families about the 2 to 5 year olds?
So playgrounds are designed by age. Ian's playground is a 5 to 12. There are more ground elements in what we were looking at, meaning that someone under the age of 5, because it's a ground element. And there's some features that I really asked to have put in there, because the playground should be inclusive. It should include sensory skills, and it's going to be a lot. The town crew, I spoke to the public works director. They can remove the footings. They can't construct the playground, but the gentleman from Game Time, who I think coached with Coach Sankey back in the late '90s, has a place over in Otis on the pond, and then the contractor who does the construction of the playgrounds is in Bangor. They've done Ian's, they did Old Brewer, New Brewer. This is on Wilson Street. The ones over in Bangor, they do essentially all the municipality ones in the state of Maine. So we've got 3 different proposals that we will review. They are all under the limit, but it's unfortunately more than what was available left in ARPA.
We can still encourage folks to use the school for the little guys.
Yeah,
And
that's
and a lot
right.
of people didn't realize that it was
Yeah.
open in the summer
open,
for the
right,
2 to
yeah.
5-year-olds.
In
yeah.
summer or even after school, when the gate, they open the gate right at the Jewish
Yeah.
school, that new playground with the grassy area.
Yeah.
That's for under, that's 2 to 5 years old. So you got 2 to 5, 5 to 12, and then you have 12 to 18, and then you have senior recreation, fitness ones, so,
Perfect.
yes.
My grandkids loved that spider web looking thing. Oh, loved it.
You may see that in the plan.
Oh, loved it. Sorry, thank you.
What else from the public? From the council?
Have we heard anything from the Historical Society when I suggested that they get a quote for the heat pump?
No.
Okay.
I ran into someone from there who said they were still discerning their way forward.
I have heard that as well unofficially. Yep.
Okay.
I also wanted to note that the, our poet laureate, Pat Ronzoni, had reached out to me about the town doing, a resolve just in support of, the 1-year anniversary, of the, not 1 year, 10-year anniversary of the closure, of the mill closure and the paper making museum that they're in the process of doing, so that would be on the December 12th. They provided some suggestive language which, just sort of memorializing the fact that it will have been 10 years since the mill closed.
One more thing. I went up to the comedy show, and it was wonderful. It was great to see. I mean, there was 200, 300, 400 people in there. I don't know the final count, but it was packed. The guy was funny, and it was good to see how it was a different crowd. I gotta say that it was more our age, right, Rich? Yeah, maybe, our age and older. It was great.
So the youth were represented well?
Well, there wasn't a lot of youth there. I had a couple that one of the guys I work with was there, and Woody Woodman, and I said he probably was the youngest couple there. But it was great, funny. I hope they do more of them, and I thought they did a great job, a super job.
212 attendees.
212.
There was an opening act and the main comedian. He did all of his new stuff up front, and at the very end, the stuff that I remembered from when I was in college.
Yeah.
He did that. He was a former sheriff.
York.
Yeah,
Former
for York
York
County.
sheriff.
So, and he was in costume, so it was great.
Yeah.
And all the events. I'm sorry I didn't share that with this committee, but I did with the Economic Development Committee. In the Whale had 112 participants.
Wow.
Very well attended. There was a reception at the beginning and then Q&A at the end. So that went extremely well. And then the Alamo Theater had, for 2 weekends in a row, had the Lost on a Mountain in Maine. It's going to come back a 3rd weekend because most nights they had to turn people away.
I missed it. I can't wait for it to come back.
So the Economic Development Committee sponsored or donated to each one of those events, minus the movie that came out of a different line item because we typically work with the Alamo on that, typically to reduce prices for the public to attend. And we worked out a pretty neat deal with them where youth were able to see Lost on a Mountain in Maine for $5, and specifically the Reach School, the 5th grade and 6th grade all got to go at no cost. So lots of great stuff happening.
You just reminded me of something for the Reach School. I just want to shout out to the Reach School. There's been a cat that's been climbing really high in the tree, like lots. And these guys have just a Herculean effort to try and rescue it. I know that's not really council stuff, but it was pretty cool. These kids in the middle of their day so focused on a cat stuck in a tree.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just a quick note, I do want to congratulate, we have our 2 councilors elect that will be joining us in January here this evening. I want to congratulate Paul Hobbs and Jen Terrian on their victories. I think it speaks well for the town of Bucksport that 2 other people who may run again in the future are also here this evening. So they, obviously the interest in the town of Bucksport wasn't just in order to be on the town council, it goes beyond that, so that speaks well of the town. And just would like to say a big thank you to the folks in the town office, Jackie and her crew that ran the election that day. As someone who also stood outside the polls the vast majority of the day, it seemed to go very, very smoothly. Almost everyone was friendly. It's very encouraging to see how many people, registered voters in Bucksport, voted. And I saw in the Hancock, in the Ellsworth American today that was the trend here in our county. So just would like to call that out as a positive as well. And welcome to the two of you.
Great civic health, Bucksport.
Oh, and we absolutely should also congratulate our deputy mayor who was elected to the State House in Augusta. I think we'll do a very, very good job representing Bucksport in Orland and Verona Island and Penobscot. So it was an interesting campaign. You had, I'm probably pulling words directly from Steve's mouth, but I think there were two very, very good people running, excellent people running, and Steve happened to win, and I congratulate him. I think he'll do very well.
Thank you.
You bet. I haven't forgotten anybody else, have I? Okay. Can't believe I did that, but here we are. And he just got back from Augusta today. Steve, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but is there anything you'd like to?
I'm just blessed to have the opportunity, and I'm thankful that I get to be on this council and represent the 4 towns that I represent. I've said this multiple times, but I'll say it again because it's important to me. These 4 towns that I represent, when the state went through the redistricting processes, when I really began to pique my interest for this position, because it is my home, it is the core of my family's houses, businesses, where we're from, all those things, and that's important to me. And sitting where I sit on the council, I'm really excited that Kathy Downs sat in this same seat and represented the town of Bucksport in the legislature as well as on the council, and I think that's a great thing for the town to have someone to sit in both seats. So as I pursue that this next year, we'll see what the future brings, but I'm excited for us to have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Can you give us a projection of when you'll have everything squared away in Augusta?
The answer is no. No.
Based on what happened today and the way today looked, I don't know when
You
anything
have to
will
run a
happen.
couple more times.
Yeah. All right, thank you, everyone. Let's see, so we've talked about this already, but let's call it out just so we can schedule them. For upcoming public hearings, topics for committee assignment, and scheduling of the said meetings. On the 12th, we have a night. We have an infrastructure committee meeting that we need to schedule, as well as a finance committee meeting. We also have during the meeting the public hearing on the dams, or specifically
See you all
the
at
Silver Lake
5?
Dam. Yeah, so let's talk about that. What
Just
time?
saying.
What time do we want to start?
Well,
on?
the facilities, I would think a half an hour. You've asked for information, you know, is this something you're thinking about, when, and if so, when, et cetera? I would think a half an hour would be sufficient. And the, other one, which is the FMLA, is another one that shouldn't be a long discussion. We have to pick a number. There's no, it starts January 1. I will have more information on how many people are impacted, what the fiscal impact is from January to June, because there's no doubt in my mind this will be a negotiating item in the union contract about who pays the 1%. It will be in
Been
every
there.
union contract that there is, but
Just signed by.
then the second one, which is the tax anticipation note, shouldn't take very long. There's not a way to avoid this. You know, if we're gonna pay our bills, we need to do this.
I'm wondering, Mr. Mayor, if the finance could be held first. I'll be in Augusta that day and ramming home by
Sure.
5.
Well, how about,
So it's
I was thinking of starting at 6 to 6:30 for
okay.
infrastructure or 6 to 6:30 for infrastructure, 6:30 to 7 for finance.
Okay, I can get back by
Is
then.
that-
Yep.
I-
6 is good.
I don't think we need, unless somebody's got more to say about these items than I think. we've discussed the majority of them.
Okay.
Who's the chair of infrastructure?
Mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can keep that, you can keep that moving enough, get that
Who's the
half
chair of
hour.
finance?
Will do. Sorry,
Mr. Mayor,
The mayor is?
you're the chair of finance.
I am not the chair of finance.
Finance hasn't met since it has a,
Oh, that's
I
right.
probably was the last chair of
You
finance,
were.
but we would have to elect.
Who's
a
on
new chair.
finance? We're all
Yeah.
gonna be here anyway, no
Sure,
matter.
Yep.
I am on finance.
I'm on finance.
I think.
I'm on
Dan must be the
finance.
I
third
think
one.
Danny's the third one.
I'm on,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's also, the 12th is also the last meeting for Paul and Dan.
Okay.
That's right.
Pizza?
We don't have time.
I would
So
like to do
6
better
o'clock?
for them.
6 o'clock, you said?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
We'll be in the parking lot after.
Alright, and then 6:30 for finance.
Perfect.
Have we missed anything else? Are we good? All right. If not, Chair will entertain a motion to
Motion
adjourn.
adjourned. Second?
Those in favor? Opposed? Good night, everyone.